For the most updated version of the Glyphs RPG blueprint, tokens, accessories and resources, please visit www.glyphsrpg.com. Also visit 2ddice.com for our internationally popular D20 RPG coins and our other masterful coin works.
Hi, this is C.W. Smith III, author of the Glyphs RPG blueprint and a creator of the token system. So what we have here this evening is an exploded view of our token that by now we should all be very familiar with, assuming you've gone through the book and the tutorials. I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about the token itself, but specifically the glyphs, and especially certain ones in particular, which you're going to be seeing a lot, because I want to make absolutely sure that you're comfortable with this for those of you that are interested in really getting into the random gen part of glyphs, because to me the focus attacks and the token slides and all that, it's a lot of fun. As a player, it's very skill based, obviously, but really, in my opinion, the essence of glyphs as a system are the glyphs themselves. So I just want to make absolutely sure that people, those of you architects out there, are comfortable with this. And so I'm going to spend a little bit more time going into some of the glyphs themselves, because this is an oracle system, okay? In case you haven't realized that by now, this is, mechanically speaking, this is an oracle, except instead of divination and all that other stuff out there that you see, this is designed for game masters, because we want to use our surface mind to generate an instant result in real time using different clues that the glyphs give you. So this is very much should be approached like an oracle if you're going to be using it for random gen, okay? So this tutorial, consider it more supplemental, if you will, okay? Now, let me just say one thing. Now, it may sound like I'm shooting myself in the foot here, but I mean, honestly, I will say that you do not have to master the token glyphs individually in order to actually play glyphs, okay? Even if you're running a game, you don't have to actually master these, okay? That's actually what's kind of nice about this system. It's so easy to play and run that a lot of this here is optional, and it's really nice for those of you who love random encounters and randomly generating different things, because I mean the possibilities are endless. So these are very, very powerful in and of themselves, but if you want to just jump in and play, or just jump in and run the game, you'd be surprised how little you actually have to use them to have a good time. So for those of you out there that are cringing, oh my god, I gotta learn, you know, this plethora of symbols and this really complicated system and all that, well, yes and no. I mean, if you really go through and play the system how it's designed, then yes, you do have to master this, and that's what the tutorials have been there for. And this extra presentation here is to help you grasp the fundamentals of understanding symbols, okay? How do we use symbols spun by our token here, and how do we use that to our advantage as a game master? So that's what this piece here is for. So if that's you, then by all means, this is meant for you. If not, then don't worry about it at all, and just move on to your token slides and all that. But let's see, let me just get one more thing here. So now I want to point something out here. So these are my 2D dice coins. Now, in case you haven't known, I am the inventor of the 2D dice coins. They're very internationally popular. As of now, as of this recording, I've got them in 8 different countries. So they've been pretty well received, even though role-playing is a very niche market. I'm very happy with them, and they will continue to grow internationally. So for all you D20 people out there, this is a very hot seller. This is my dark nickel finish, okay? They come in gold, silver, and copper as well at 2ddice.com. Now I just want to, besides just plugging that in real quick, I want to show you the difference between the 2D dice coin, or any dice for that matter, and the token. So with the dice coin as an example, this 2D dice coin, each concentric ring is a dice. So from a D4 through a D20. So 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20, each ring is a dice, right? You'll see here Each one is marked in red to show you. So it's a very simple piece to use. And we actually read this the same way we do the token. Spin it, randomize it, flip it, however you want to get a nice random effect. Simply read your most upright or centered number. That's all we do to randomize, just like we do with a token, right? The issue I have with this is, yes, people love them. Yes, the D&D people and any D20 person would definitely love this. And like I said, they've done very well for me internationally. However, be that as it may, as fancy as it is and as comfortable and awesome to use as it is, it's still just a random number generator, right? So it's limited, okay, fundamentally. Okay, this or a conventional set of dice for that matter. This, the token, right, lets me do random number calculations and random context. So that's what all these symbols here are. Very nice way to do that, because when your players bombard you with questions about their scenario, or if you need to throw something random in, or you need to go in a specific detail, you want to jog your surface mind. That's what this is meant for. So on the surface, it's very sophisticated looking, it's very beautiful, but in reality, it's going to be your best friend if you understand how to use it. And like I said, consider this portion here supplemental. So that covers that, and that's how I wanted to quickly differentiate, this or dice for that matter versus this. Okay, they're both beautiful. They both function differently, in my opinion. This is superior because it does more. It can store a lot more information, and a good game master of the system can do a lot of cool things with the token. Okay, so enough about that. Now, briefly, I'm going to go over the quick glyphs. I believe I've already gone over each one of them in a previous tutorial, but I want to focus on three main sets in particular. Okay, so that's kind of the objective of this, because you're going to be seeing these a lot: the element glyphs, the function glyphs, and the states glyphs. Those are going to be the main highlights of our tutorial here, because again, those are the more Oracle-like glyphs. So very subjective, but you want to focus on what they communicate to you based on the context. So very powerful stuff here. So real quick, let me just highlight. So first here, we have our path glyphs, right? So here, 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 and all the way around. So which way is the road going, all that stuff, right? Here, obviously, we have our digits. So if you need number calculation, right, 0 through 9 is right there, okay? So in the tutorials, we go over very detailed on how to make different calculations. That's all the numbers you need, really. So most people will only use the digits or the element glyphs, okay? So here we have our element glyphs of water, fire, carbon, and air, okay? Some of the most important you're going to see, right? All right, then here, I'm just going in order here, no particular order here. So our cardinal glyphs, so southeast, southwest, southwest, right? You get it. So which way are we going? Where's the threat coming from, et cetera, right? That's what we're trying to learn with those. Here, the this exploded view is on the positive side of the coin, but we have positive and negative faces. So just be mindful of that. So in this case, our polarity glyphs are here, the pluses or the minus signs and the X sign, right? So triple plus would be virtuous as an example, and so forth. Now these have different meanings based on the context as well, or to help you with calculations, as we've explored in detail through the book and tutorials. But those are there for you to glance at. Okay. Then we have the permutation glyphs. Okay. So the outline star, the thingy here, the stretch icon, and the skew glyph. So those, I rarely use them unless I want to go into more details physically about a subject. I'm not going to really cover those in this tutorial. I want to spend more time, like I said, talking about the element glyphs. And here we have the states glyphs. So the wavy triangle, the linear square, clustered hexagon figure, and the dotted circle. You're going to see those a lot for those of you who have been doing a lot of random gen. And then finally, we have our function glyphs. Okay, so the speech bubble, the wrench, the clock, and the skull and crossbones. We're going to be seeing these quite a bit for random encounters. and also to designate something's purpose. So let's go ahead and, like I said, I want to focus more on the element glyphs, states glyphs, and for a little bit those function glyphs as well for this particular tutorial, because again, those are going to be the majority of interpretations that you're going to be using as an architect who will be using the token for random gen. On to the first subsection of the supplemental token glyph tutorial. Okay, so I think honestly the easiest and probably the most appropriate glyphs to start with here are the element glyphs. So water, fire, carbon, and air. Okay, so I'm gonna go one by one and I'll give you the textbook definitions that I gave to them, because when you're running a game, those are probably going to be the ones that are going to make the most sense based on the context. That goes for all these as well. But basically, I want you to know that, when you're reading a symbol, you want to make sure that you're communicating with it, basically. I know that sounds tacky, but that's essentially what it is. So what does a symbol communicate to you when you see it at a particular moment in time, right? So the water symbol, as an example, may be quite literal water, or it can mean something more subjective, something more emotional. Maybe it means depression. It can mean, liquor. Maybe it's the element of nitrogen, or maybe the area is wet, or somebody's frozen. Very subjective, right? Now, the nice thing is, generally the meaning that makes the most sense will pop right in your head as you go to read, drawing from your subconscious. At least that's what I suspect is happening when we use this, as we do other Oracle systems, for those of you that are into that kind of thing. So this is nice because it's right there at your fingertips. Okay, so you want to know randomly that the qualities of a certain subject. You spin the token, flip it, whatever, to randomize, and you interpret your glyph. So in this case, water. Let's talk about water. So what does that communicate to me right off the bat? So again, depending on your context, can mean a number of different things. Water obviously is the element of water. It's very intuitive in nature. It can imply cold weather. Maybe somebody's, like I said, frozen. Maybe it's snowing outside. Water also embodies mystery to it. Okay, sort of a mysterious quality to it. Okay, emotional in nature. Okay, so that's kind of how I would look at that. Very artistic too. So people that are artistic, or you're describing something, in the city or whatever, and you want to know what district something is, I guess. Water, like I said, is more introspective in nature. I guess that's what I'm looking for. And that's how I would interpret water. So again, the book has loads of definitions based on the context for each of these. But this will help you understand how I'm getting those, okay? So that's what water communicates to me, okay? Now, we're not going to get into all the calculations here that we use. That's already done for you in the tutorials in the book, but we're just looking at symbols. So that's water. So fire. What does the fire element communicate to me? So it's red, right? It's passionate, it's warm, it's fiery, it's very energetic, maybe a little mature sometimes. Sometimes depending on the context, it can mean lust. It's very lustful. Maybe if you're talking about a landscape, it could mean subterranean. Maybe there's lava. If you're talking seasons, maybe it's summertime. Or if you're talking general, issues with people and civilizations, maybe that means type of energy going on here. Okay, so that's what that communicates to me. Okay, next we have carbon or earth. Okay, they're both interchangeable, carbon or earth. I like carbon for this system. That's what I went with. Okay, carbon. Basically, it's very earthen, it's very grounded, very stable, right? Communicates stability, very firm foundation, right? Matter, things like that. So landscape, if you're just dealing with regular land and not something, like the sea or whatever. If you're talking food, I don't know, maybe something salty, or in civilization, this would apply to commerce. So money, right? Earth, carbon, very material based. So I would go with money on that. So very practical. Most people nowadays are all about material things, right? So that's how that communicates to me, overall. And again, the context is going to define how you interpret it, but overall, those are the energies that you're going to get from that symbol, okay? Next, let's move on to air. So air, that's a very interesting one. So obviously we have oxygen, right? The air that we breathe, wind. This also alludes to the mind. So whereas this, earth would allude more to the body, okay? And water may allude to the soul, the spirit. This would allude more to the mind. And fire would be more the creative energies, the passionate energies that drive us. But air is what we're focused on now, so it's got more mental quality. So intellectual, things like that. So, in another context, maybe it's the sky, right? Or maybe it's even outer space. Or maybe we're talking about the season of fall. So that's how I would look at it. Or maybe winter, depending on which interpretation you're going with, okay? Socially, I would say this implies science, right? Intellectual, right? Socially, water and introspective things. Socially, fire would imply war or maybe police, very, physical type energies there, right? Earth would imply, commerce and all that stuff. But air, like I said, would be more science, education, things like that. So, again, these are just my own descriptions of each of these. Now, again, you're going to expand on these depending how deep in the system you go. Come up with your own. But that pretty much covers it for the element glyphs in and of themselves as to the general descriptions. Okay, so now let's move on to the states glyphs. States glyphs are very powerful symbols that you're generally going to be using when you're describing something's physical qualities or something's layout or its order or things like that. So these have to do mostly with physical features and arrangements. Okay, now what's neat about the states glyphs is they can be interpreted a couple different ways, right? Whereas element glyphs, we have calculations, numerical calculations, and the element itself, right? Very raw primordial energies. This is more structure based and double interpretation. So on the exterior, you have a geometrical shape, so triangle, square, hexagon, circle. But on the inside, we have symbols as well that are very, I have found, at least from experimentation, to be very universally workable, pretty interesting enough. So two ways to read these. Look at the internal piece or the external piece. The external piece generally only applies to geometry or, the room's shape or the shape of the ceiling or structures and things like that, right? Geometrical based. But otherwise, for a lot of interpretations, you're going to be using the internal symbols because that tells you, like I said, the arrangement of things, and somebody's, state of being and so forth. So these are very powerful, as I have found. Like I said, they're my, experimentation and actually doing this and not just reading about it, right? So here we have, in the states glyphs, we have the fiery, the electrical looking triangle, the linear square, the clustered hexagon, and the dotted circle, right? So I've already talked about that. Let's start, let's start here, and I'm going to go in order. Actually, let me start with the triangle. I'll work my way clockwise to make it easier for you, those of you who are following, okay? And I will try to slow down a little bit. I do talk a little fast. So it's triangle. So let's talk about the outer symbol and then the inner symbol. So the outer symbol, what does that communicate? So obviously it's square. Triangle, right? Or maybe a tetrahedron, a pyramid, right? If you're looking at structure. Maybe mountains. If you're looking at landscapes and stuff, first thing that comes to mind, mountains, right? Immediately. So if you're looking at the inner symbol, then that's very subjective, but the symbol, it's interesting enough. It can simply imply an energy, or it can be very literally interpreted. Depending, like I said, what jumps out at you at that moment in time. Pretty interesting things can happen as you get into this. Okay, so this inner symbol, obviously wavy, electrical energy type energy, right? Casuality. Maybe the land is dry, right? Cracked and dry. Okay. or maybe the clothes are wrinkled, something's wrinkled and tattered, okay? Or maybe there's a very intricate motif carved into something, right? That implies design, at least to me it does. Okay, if you're talking geography, maybe there's a valley, right? See the valley carved into there? That's what that implies. Okay, maybe there's grass in the landscape. So nice, pointy, sharp blades of grass, perhaps. Okay, and if you're talking about formation, just staggered formation, right? Or if you're talking about landscapes or detailed features, very jagged, very brittle type energy going on here. So again, those are just some of the interpretations that I came up with, and that's what that communicates to me when I look at that symbol. Okay, now let's move on to the linear / square states glyph. Okay, so the outer symbol obviously is a cube or a square, right? A little bit with the permutation glyphs. Maybe it's a rectangle, right? Okay, for something very flat, or maybe plains, like if you're describing landscape, maybe it's. So that's what that communicates to me, okay, as a square. And the inner symbol, the lines. Now the lines mean several different things. So obviously very linear energy type going on, very stripped down, very barren, very smooth. If you're talking somebody, a person, they're maybe they're very hairy, right? Maybe you see pieces of hair coming out, from their head, very hairy, right? That's one interpretation. Again, very subjective. Long, right? The energy long comes to mind when I think of lines. Okay. Vegetation, growth, things like that, or maybe it's completely barren and clear. Maybe your land is completely barren and clear. Maybe it's flat and there's just nothing there. So, again, depends on how you want to look at it. Depending on what the first thing that comes to mind based on your context is how you want to read these. There is no right or wrong answer. Nobody's here quizzing you, except yourself. Okay, so that covers that. Let's move on to the clustered hexagon. Okay, so the outer symbol, we have the hexagon, but that could really be any polygon, technically. There's no right or wrong with that, okay? So something very stocky, very chiseled, maybe it's a cave, right? Kind of got an entrance there that kind of comes, if I'm talking landscapes. The inner symbol, let's talk about that. Very important. So that's a cluster formation, okay? Maybe it's very heavy. The subject is heavy, it's splotched, maybe the subject is tattooed, right? You maybe see a tattoo symbol there. Maybe the subject is woolly. Maybe this symbol denotes that there's a symbol entirely, maybe a very unique symbol regarding the subject that you want to flesh out. That's up to you. Okay, maybe the formation is very clustered together, the enemy formation, maybe like a phalanx, right? Very clustered together. Okay, if you're describing the landscape, vegetation, guess what? Flowers comes to mind. That kind of looks like a flower, doesn't it, in that context? That's what it does to me. If you're talking population or people, very densely populated, very clustered and compacted together. Same goes for buildings, right? Very clustered, compacted together implies a city, right? So those are some of my interpretations. I think that makes a lot of sense for these. Again, look through the book, come up with your own, whatever works best for you. And finally, for the states glyphs, we have the dotted circle, okay? So the outer symbol obviously is a circle, an oval, a sphere, right? Something very rounded, very, swollen perhaps. Maybe you're talking about hills or a dome, depending on your context, right? Inner symbol, so the dots, right? So there we have a cluster, particle type energy. Something's dotted all over the place, right? Spotted, blemished. Maybe if you're talking about landscape, maybe there's dotted with trees everywhere. Maybe trees come to mind because you got different branches sticking out here, right? Different leaves, thickness of leaves. That comes to mind. Again, it is subjective, but I think of trees when I see this. If you're talking about a room formation or people, things are very scattered everywhere, right? That's what comes to mind there. That's another interpretation. Maybe there's debris everywhere, right? Or maybe if you're talking about water, to me, this makes me think of murky water. If I want to know about the water, what the water looks like inside, maybe it's got debris and stuff floating around there. Maybe it's a little clouded to see in, so murky comes to mind. So again, the sky is the limit. Actually, there is no limit with these, with what you can do. Again, it is all context sensitive and it is subjective, but generally you'll find a result comes into your mind virtually instantly, because it's coming, from my understanding of this, from your subconscious mind based on the context of your game. So when you're describing something to your players and you yourself need to randomize something, or the player asks you and you want to randomize it instead of just telling them, this is a very good way to go. So we've looked at element glyphs, we've looked at states glyphs. Now one more quick thing I want to talk about is function glyphs. Very quick, I just want to briefly touch on the function glyphs here, because you're going to be seeing these quite a bit, mostly doing random encounters. But besides that, when you're dealing with random encounters and then coming up with your different list of possibilities and all that, like we've talked about, these glyphs in and of themselves are very powerful because they denote purpose. Okay, so here we have the speech bubble, the wrench, the clock, and the skull and crossbones. So the speech bubble, we'll start with that. That implies speaking, that implies people, right? Social, communication, leisure, things of that. So you could apply that towards, like I said, a random encounter, or just in and of itself, right? And it's very social in nature, right? So the building may be very social in nature. What is that? You know, maybe a lounge, right? There's so many ways you could go with that, okay? Next, we have the wrench. So that implies work, right? A trade, skill set, very skill driven, right? Tools. So obviously for skill set encounters, but maybe the vehicle is a work vehicle. Maybe it's not just a regular car. Maybe it's a truck with tools in the back. So maybe that vehicle is meant for working, right? Or what is this person's profession? This guy is a blue-collar worker. He uses tools. Maybe he's a repairman. Maybe, you know, this guy here relies more on talking for his job. Maybe he's a politician. I don't know. It's up to you how you interpret them, but really cool things you can do with the function glyphs that I wanted to show you here. Okay. Here we have the clock. Okay, that's for event / situational type encounters, but also, you know, it's interesting because that implies time, right? So if that comes up, if you're not dealing with random encounters, something that has to do with time or an event that took place, maybe historical significance and so forth. Okay, and last but not least, the combat. Or the conflict skull and crossbones glyph here. So that's we use that for combat encounters, obviously, but this indicates conflict, strife, maybe death, despair, or you know, this could apply to a person or an organization that maybe they deal with war, maybe they're, you know, they deal with force for a living, they're military people and so forth. So once again, those are just some regular generic interpretations I came up with, but these, like I said, don't just dismiss these as ways to just come up with topics for random encounters. I purpose in and of themselves, and that's for you to discover. So again, that pretty much covers it here for my supplemental tutorial for the token. Hopefully that gave you a little bit more insight as to how we read this. Again, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to this. Everything that I put in the book are my own interpretations. I think they make perfect sense. You will find that you'll probably agree with me most of the time. You may find you come up with your own. The key is look at the symbol, right, that you're drawing on the context, and what interpretation makes sense based on the context, right? What does that symbol communicate to you at that particular moment in time, right? That's why it's dangerous to sit there and try to memorize every symbol and go by every textbook and try to memorize everything, what everything means. It's a good idea to get a foundation like we've just done, but try not to obsess over the definition or the exact meaning, right? The meaning, I mean, ultimately, it's whatever means to you at that moment in time is the most important one to go with. That's going to make your gameplay very fluid and a lot less resorting to, you know, materials for a result. It's right there at your fingertips. At least that was my intention when I came up with this beautiful system. So Take care. Thank you for your time. Go ahead and take your token if you have one by your side, and just do some exploring with some different subjects and see what interpretations that you come up with on your own. Thank you.